Hunters. Hey guys, this is James at Elite Hunters. If you're wondering why I'm on Bench Clear Media or Baseball Collectors channel, it's because I was experiencing technical difficulties. I had a wide panel here. We were going to talk about Roberto Clemente and honoring his legacy. It is Hispanic Heritage Month, and just recently on the 15th, it was Roberto Clemente Day. So I had one of the biggest supporters and advocates of Roberto Clemente. His name is Julio Pabon. He has a website which he owns called LatinoSports.com, and he was the main guest speaker. And I was going to let him get into why this means so much to him to try to have his number retired with Major League Baseball. And with that, I was going to have a lot of guest speakers to basically say, state what they thought the legacy of Roberto Clemente means to them, and also how they felt about his legacy moving forward, if his numbers should be retired or not. So with Mike's help, I'm hoping to get this ball rolling. Mike, you could, I guess, start the first guest little by little here. Hey, Dr. Beckett, how are you?
James, I'm great. Yeah, it's great to be on here to honor Roberto. I saw him play many times, not that many times in person, but on TV. The Pirates were great in the late 50s, mid-late 50s when I started following him. And Clemente, I wouldn't say he could do no wrong. I felt like his batting average when I watched was about 800, not 300. So he was an amazing guy, offense and defense, and an even better person.
And why was he like your one guy you gravitated to when it came to collecting? Because from what I hear, you have like the greatest Roberto Clemente collection.
I wouldn't say that, but he's certainly worthy of being very, very collectible for anybody. But my dad was a good baseball player, didn't play professionally, but we went to the game. We'd sit out in right field or up the first baseline. So that was back from 57, 58, 59. And that's where we wanted to be. That's where the action was. Even though right field, when you're little league, if you go out and play right field, it's like that you're stuck out there. But with the Pirates, he was amazing. It was just amazing. So he played the game the way it should have been played, and was fun to watch. He had a flair. Again, what's not to like about that? And then they won the World Series in 60,
61
and 71 as well. But yeah,
yeah, and he was also the MVP of the World Series.
Well, he was amazing. Amazing.
Now, Willie Mays was privileged to play alongside Roberto Clemente most of his career. And many consider Willie Mays the best all-around ball player of that era. And when they asked him who was the best player he ever saw, he would say it's Roberto Clemente, aside from him, of course. Do you feel the same way, that Roberto Clemente is bar none the best outside of maybe Willie Mays?
Well, they talk about the 5 tools, and the only one where you could really kind of take Clemente away from a 5-star is power, because he hit for average, he ran well, he fielded well, he threw spectacularly. But I think what Willie is knowing, and the other players knew, if you're playing at Forbes Field, swinging for the fences was not helping your team win. He had great power. But he wasn't going to be a home run hitter in that ballpark.
Right.
So I think, my hat's off to Willie for being willing to say that. But if you lived in Pittsburgh, there's no disputing that he was the greatest.
And he also had the privilege of playing with another great Willie. That's Willie Stargell, his dynamic duo mate. And
Roberto had his own basket catch. Willie would, kind of nonchalantly have the ball kind of fall in his lap and do this kind of a basket catch. Clemente did that too.
And how do you feel about his number being retired? Do you feel that Major League Baseball should not only consider having Jackie Robinson, but also Roberto Clemente's number retired for basically being one of the best humanitarians the sport has ever had?
You can make a case for it. The main thing I would make a case for is that this is a man to be remembered in the totality of being a great player and a great, like you said, humanitarian. So if nobody can wear 21, that's really a big deal. If everybody wears 21 a certain day, that's a big deal. So whatever is going to honor him, Jackie Robinson had a different situation. But again, Clemente took a lot of abuse too. So back in the 50s, he was misunderstood and a little bit of a language barrier in Pittsburgh, and they were, he persevered through it.
Right.
Definitely worthy of honor. And the number 21, that's the number I wore, when I played in sports. I wore 21 in deference to Roberto, the great one.
I was 2 numbers off. I was 23 because I was a huge Don Mattingly fan, but I didn't have the privilege of watching Roberto Clemente play. I was born on the same year he passed, but afterwards I learned what a great hero he was to Hispanics. So,
James, he was larger than life, and I'm sitting here thinking, and I've said this on my podcast, that if I would have been good enough to play center field for the Pirates, not necessarily next to Roberto, but that was my dream as a kid. And now I'm sitting here, and I'm 6 foot 170. That's exactly what Roberto was, if that. And I'm thinking, how come I don't have that kind of power? My hands, I don't feel like I have weak hands, but he had super strong hands, and just this gap power to just lash the ball, and his arm. I mean, I didn't get that gift, but we're the same size. Amazing.
Right. He attributes that hand strength to his mother, hereditary from his mom. And he used to even compete in the Puerto Rican Olympics and throw the javelin. And he always had strong hands, like you said, which helped him with baseball. Well, Jim, I really want to thank you so much for joining us. We have a few more people waiting, and I don't want to be rude to them, but hopefully I can have you on in a future date where my stream isn't, conking out on me, and we could talk up some more baseball.
Well, thanks, James. It's a really worthy thing you're doing, and thanks, Mike Moynihan, too, for pinch hitting to get it all set up. But it was your idea, and Julio's carried the ball as well. So a real team effort, and I'm glad to be just a small part of it tonight. So thanks, James.
Thank you. All right, Mike. Let's see who's next. We got John, the Mangini collection.
How are you, James? Honored to be on.
Well, John, I really wanted to have you on because you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, a big Pittsburgh Pirates fan, along with others that are in the back. And I wanted to know what he meant to you as a Pirates fan. And also, you might have seen him play for a little bit, right?
Well, I didn't see him play, not that I remember. My father tells me that he used to put me on his lap and tell me to watch this ball player because I may never see another one like him.
Right. And what did he mean to Pittsburgh when you would go to the games?
Well, I mean, he was just larger than life in Pittsburgh. I mean, he is just idolized there. My father and my grandmother never missed a Pirate game, but they were both baseball fanatics. And so from the time I was a little kid, I learned about Roberto, and I would hear stories from my father of what he did in the outfield defensively and his arm especially. And, he told me that he pretty much invented that sliding catch out of, into foul territory. Like he used to do. He used to scale the fences and catch the ball. And so, I mean, he was just, idolized, and he was my idol. And I was a baseball fanatic. And of course, I had to play right field. And when I was in the 5th grade, I remember we had a Roberto Clemente book. It was a little paperback. And every recess, I would just sit there and read it and read it and read it. And finally, one day, my teacher just handed it to me and said, hey, just take it home with you. But I read everything about him. He used to, I read in that book that he used to squeeze a rubber ball, and that's how he strengthened his arm. And so I squeezed a rubber ball every day. You know, if Clemente did it, I wanted to do it. My dad would tell me how he was known to step in the bucket a little bit, you know, when he was batting. And so I stepped in the bucket when I batted. Like, I just wanted to be what Clemente was.
Yeah. I remember you going into detail with Manny Sanguillen, and that used to touch me when you would tell me about him being his best friend. Can you tell me just, I guess, revisit that a little bit, because it touched me so much. I want you to share some of that.
Yeah, they were very, very close. You know, when Roberto passed away, when his plane went down, Manny actually missed his funeral because he was still helping to search for his body.
And they were always teammates, or how did that friendship gravitate? How did they get together as best friends?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it was with the Pirates. And if you think about it, they were kind of similar Latin players playing in Pittsburgh. And, you know, at that time, they probably had a lot in common. I don't know the full story of how they became so close, but Manny came up in '68, and he left for a short stint to go to the A's, but then came right back and was one of the few players that was on the '71 World Series and the '79 World Series team for the Pirates. And Clemente has a throw in 1971 in that World Series that is just a rope to Manny. And he holds, I believe it was Mark Belanger at third from scoring. And he throws this thing from the right field wall. Just one of the greatest throws you will ever see in your life, and especially in a World Series game to hold a guy at third. Just an insane throw. But
I know.
List you look at, Roberto Clemente, as far as best arms ever, he's always number one on the list.
Yeah.
I've never been in a list where he wasn't number one. Just an incredible arm.
Now, how do you feel about his number being retired? Do you think it's a just cause to try to have it retired?
You know what? I mean, it is, but I agree with everything that Dr. Beckett said about that. Like, he needs honored, and I think Major League Baseball does a good job of that. You know, like maybe wearing his number, everybody wearing his number one game, that kind of thing. When it comes to retiring a number, you know, I mean, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it. He's my favorite player, but you know, when you start to get into that, as far as just retiring numbers, then, you know, where do you draw the line? How many numbers are going to be retired? Who's next? You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know about that, but I pretty much agree with everything Dr. Beckett said on that subject.
Well, I want to thank you so much for hopping on for a few minutes. I don't want to be rude to everyone else that's waiting. I want to hear what everyone else has to say, but thank you so much, John, for coming on and sharing your thoughts with the life of Roberto Clemente.
Thank you very much. Honored to
Thank
be
you.
here, James. Thanks.
Okay. Hey, Don, how are you?
Good, James. Thanks for having me on here. Really appreciate it.
Don, well, you're in Pittsburgh as we speak, so I thought it was appropriate to ask you to come on and be part of this panel of YouTubers to basically let us know have different thoughts of what Roberto Clemente means to you guys. And would you like to share what he's like for you guys in Pittsburgh?
First of all, if you park downtown to go across the bridge to PNC Park, the bridge is named Clemente Bridge. There's a big plaque on the bridge. As soon as you get over the bridge, you look to your left, there's a big statue of Roberto Clemente. You get into the stadium and you look at the right field wall, it's 21 feet high. For number 21 feet for Roberto Clemente. So he is still revered here in Pittsburgh as he is in Puerto Rico, even though many of us never got to see him play. Just the stories, as John said, from our parents and watching, the beauty of YouTube, watching videos. I went to a card show this weekend, and the amount of people that are still wearing Clemente shirts is amazing. He's just, he's our Mickey Mantle, as Mantle is to New York City or Babe Ruth. He's our star, and he's just, I don't know how to put it in words. He's number one.
So there's nobody that you could say is up there with Roberto. He's by himself, number one, the greatest
In
Pirate.
baseball, without a doubt, if there was a Mount Rushmore of Pittsburgh athletes, I believe 3 are perceived as no-brainers, and that would be Roberto, Mario Lemieux in hockey, Joe Green in football, and then the fourth spot is kind of a toss-up. But as far as baseball goes, there's no doubt about it. There are a few other statues around the stadium. Mazeroski, Hannes Wagner, and Stargell all have one. But that's all they have. They don't have the right field wall. They don't have the bridge. Speaking about what John said with retiring the number, he's honored with an award, the Roberto Clemente Award. And, when you see the winners of it, you just see how thrilled they are to win that award,
Right.
And not just the Hispanic players, just players in general that win it. Or just, that's something it feels like they strive. I don't want to say strive for, but it's a big honor to win that award.
Right. I believe it's a big honor, like the Hank Aaron Award and so forth. But when you think about the way he lost his life, it is a travesty that's the way you lose someone. But he always said that he thought he wasn't gonna live long. He
Right.
even hinted on his second to last year in '71 when they were saying, I forgot who it was. I think Richie Ashburn had said, "You're almost close to 3,000," and he was like, "Well, that's if the good Lord wants me to."
Okay.
He says, "You never know when you're gonna go." So
Right.
he almost had like an inkling that his design was coming to an end, and that's like the weirdest thing. Where with all that, it's like that was his plight on life, not just to be a baseball player, but to help out in a way where it was going to cost him his life. That's
Right. And people had warned him not to go on that plane, that they didn't trust that plane. And even I believe his son had a premonition that plane was going to go down. And a little known fact, there was a player that used to play for the Pirates, Neil Walker, and he played for the Mets and a few other teams. His dad, Tom Walker, played for the Pirates for a short stint, and he was supposed to be on that plane with Roberto, and it was New Year's Eve, and Roberto said, "No, go home with your family. Don't go on the flight with me." And
yeah, that's so sad. Well, Don, I want to thank you so much for hopping on with us.
Absolutely, James. My
It was
pleasure.
an honor to have you here. I was very excited to have you as one of the panel guests. Thank you so much.
Great to be here. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Hey, George, how are you?
I'm doing great, James. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be among this group of YouTubers. Wow, what a group.
Well, it goes to show what I felt about you and your stature as fellow YouTubers. So I'm excited to know, what is your thoughts on Roberto Clemente and his legacy with you?
Well, I like you. I think we're about almost the same age, if not the same age. I didn't have the privilege of watching him play, but I had a connection to Pennsylvania. And so I'd go back to the Philadelphia area where my family was. And this was in like the late 70s when the We Are Family Pirates were taking, the nation by storm. And, you'd watch them and they would be on the game of the week and stuff like that. And even I believe Monday Night Baseball back in like the late 70s, 79. And, I was really liked Dave Parker a lot. And I would meet my cousins and we go through baseball cards and I'd be asking about Parker and Stargell and they're the best and they're so great. And they would say, they were a little older, and they would say, well, there's this guy, Roberto Clemente. You have to know about him. And then I started to know the story of him and how he came up, and obviously unfortunate end to his life, but all the successes he had. And as a collector of baseball cards, then started to buy his cards when I was young, which was very, I think I have one or two from when I was growing up. It didn't matter if they were beat up or not, because you knew that this was one of the greatest players of all time. And you knew that he The story of the flight on New Year's Eve to Nicaragua, the earthquake victims, is obviously a tremendous part of his legacy, and the humanitarian award that you guys were referring to that started to be given, I believe, in 1971. It wasn't named the Roberto Clemente Award, but in 1971, the award began and then took on his name in 1973 after the tragic accident.
Yeah. It pains my heart to think that there's a lot of fight back and forth with whether he should be honored in what way. And I wish Julio was here I guess he could colorize a little bit more on what's going on behind the scenes, which is one of the reasons why I was excited to have him on. But
Sure.
He really feels like it's worthy to have him for the Hispanic community, so you could point the finger and say he's on that level, not like Jackie Robinson to say he broke the color barrier, but as far as like to give your life to, like, where there's so many people who are selfish and worrying about contracts and money and their fame. This guy just never worried about that, and it's just a big deal to him, and it touches me,
And I think that, not having him on right now, I'm sure we'll have interviews with him later, and that'd be fantastic. Just from my own personal perspective, I went to graduate school in San Antonio, Texas. And so I went to this #1 Latino Hispanic graduate school that's in South Texas there. And the big baseball fans in Texas, especially in San Antonio, even though they don't have a ball team, they have the San Antonio Missions, I believe they had. But everybody knew who Roberto Clemente was. Even in 2000, 2003, they all knew who he was, clearly, because they had been raised by people who talked about him, who watched the games. And I think regarding the number, I think the best, like John had said, like the guys have said, the best way to honor him, whatever people feel like is the best way to honor him. But to me, the most impressive award in Major League Baseball gives away every year is the Roberto Clemente Award. Like I said, it's one of the longest running awards. It was named after him in 1973. And when you look at the names of the people that have won the award, it's riddled with wonderful guys who've contributed to the community, who are all-time Hall of Famers. Cal Ripken, Tony Gwynn, Willie Mays won the first award, Rod Carew, Pete Rose, Puckett. But then there are also guys like Jamie Moyer, Kurt Schilling, Dave Stewart. When you go down, Andre Thornton, when you go down the list, you see that it's an award, and it's only given once a year to one person. It's not like the Cy Young or the MVP. It's given once a year. And I think that says volumes to how important it is. And I think that if you were to ask any of the guys on the list, including the most recent winner, Adam Wainwright, he would probably tell you that may be the most important award and valued award he's ever won.
Wow. I don't think there's any other way to end you being on this live stream, but with something so nice for you to have said it that way. Thank you, George, for being on, and I'm very happy that you were able to join us.
It's a pleasure, James. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Mark Rudolph with another Clemente Chronicles.
What's up, James? Thanks for having me.
One of the guys I was excited to have on, because you are almost every one of your content is honoring Roberto Clemente. Why is it that this man just rules your PC the way that it does?
Well, it all started with my father and my uncles telling me stories about Clemente when they were growing up in Puerto Rico and watching them in Winter League ball and everything. Then we moved over to New York and in Brooklyn, and my dad used to take me to the ball games. He told me and I don't remember this. I was like 4 or 5 years old. He took me to a Pirate game to see Clemente and everything, and he just tell me the stories about what Clemente did to the community in Puerto Rico and everything here. There's a little story also. Clemente, he ball players, managers, everybody's telling him, why you go play winter ball? Why you put your body through all that? He felt obligated to give back to the Puerto Rican community. People in Puerto Rico are poor. They don't have TVs. They don't have They can't afford tickets to go to Pittsburgh to watch him play. So he felt obligated to go out there and play for the Puerto Rican people out there. You know, he was a quiet gentleman. He was proud of his Puerto Rican heritage and stood up for the minority rights. What Jackie Robinson did for the African American people, Roberto Clemente did for the Latinos. How many ball players can you say that is so revered in United States, in Puerto Rico, and in Latin America?
He is. It's true. It's not many that you could say is revered and looked upon in such a heroic and high stature that Senor Roberto Clemente is. And I always remember there's one fact that you always like to commend Roberto for owning. What is that one? He's the only player in history to do what?
Oh, yeah, he hit a walk-off grand slam inside the park home run.
There you go. And he's the only one that could ever do that, right? The only one in the history of baseball.
He's the only one that's done that, and probably won't ever happen again.
And how do you feel about his number being retired? Do you think it should be retired?
You know, do I, I wouldn't mind if his number's retired. Like John and Dr. Beckett mentioned, you open up a can of worms if you retire that number. Who's next? Babe Ruth? I mean, I am all for it if he gets his number retired. God knows he deserves it. But I'm thinking, let's, do that day Roberto Clemente did like we're doing now. Have every ball player wear his number. Not just award winners or the Pirates. Let everybody wear it,
Right.
That's my thinking.
Julio Pabon, I wish he was here. He always said it should be 3 numbers and only 3. And the ones that you mentioned were the 3. He always wanted Jackie Robinson, of course, Roberto Clemente, and Babe Ruth. He thought appropriately those should be like the Mount Rushmore numbers to be retired and no one else. But unfortunately, he's not here to explain the reasoning why, but he feels the same way, like what you just said. Well, thank you, Mark, for joining us. I am so happy you were able to join, with especially the fact that you're always showcasing his cards, and you did send me a nice little gift once with the Roberto Clementes, and I felt it was appropriate to have you on.
Well, thank you, James, for having me on. And there you go.
There you go, Senor Roberto Clemente.
All right. Take care. Be safe.
Thank you. Thank you. It's Lou Rock TV. What's up, beautiful people?
What's up, beautiful people?
I had to have you on because you have that wall of fame. You're always rolling the R's. And how are you today?
I'm excellent, my friend. Excellent. And honored to be on this great panel of YouTubers.
So tell me, what led you to being one of the guys who like to collect Roberto Clemente? What was it about him that had you PC him?
Well, I mean, I am the baby on this panel at 40 years old, the baby face, you know what I'm saying? So I haven't had the pleasure of seeing him in person. But my background is Puerto Rican. My father's Puerto Rican, my mom's Dominican. So my father and my grandfather, who taught me the game of baseball, always told stories. But the stories they told of Clemente were always first of the angel and person he was, followed by the exceptional talent he was on the field. And I think you guys touched on it in certain ways where, he was a very religious person. And I never took it as he saw his life was going to be short, but he always knew like God had a plan. And he's like, if the good Lord allowed me. And I think he lived his life that way. He lived it to the fullest. He knew he was put on this earth to help people, not just Hispanics, just people in general. And it showed, you know, the story of Walker, go home with your family. He had a family himself. But he wanted to make sure everything was done correctly for the earthquake victims. So he wanted to go on the plane on that tragic night. But what people don't realize was he was the epitome of being an American, born in Puerto Rico. My man was a Marine. A lot of people don't know he was a Marine. And even though it was like 30 years too late, he was a Presidential Medal of Honor, Freedom winner. The guy is an all-American, and everyone should aspire to be him, not just Latinos, but just people in general. I think MLB does a pretty good job of honoring him, giving him that honor.
Right. Now, so you're okay with the way things are then? You don't feel like it needs to be a retirement for his number?
Like, you know, Dr. Beckett, you know, my boy Rue Dog, everyone's pretty much touched on it. If you retire Clemente has his day, and it's synonymous with the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month. Everyone who wants to rock his number can. It's not just award winners, even though I think that's a nice touch. But if you have enough time, you can submit to MLB, you know, through the proper channels. If you want to rock his number, you can rock his number. And I think it's great because, you know, kids in the stands are like, why is Judge wearing 21? And that's how you start the conversation. That's how you start the story. That's how you talk about the legend that is Clemente. That's kind of how I learned. You know, my kids, they don't know anything about baseball, but you say Roberto Clemente in my house, they know exactly who he is. Except
So-
Bob loves baseball, but the other two.
So do you explain to Bob what Roberto Clemente means to you and why you collect them so much?
Yeah, she knows. She knows. We got a little, you know, I'm probably gonna have to read it again. You know, it's been a while, but this was like a little bedtime story. And it talks about how great he was, but it's the pride of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And it talks about how it talks more about the person that he was. And I love this book because it's just an introduction. Like I said, I think it was really, you know, 5th, 6th grade when I was doing like book reports. And anytime, you know, I was able to do a book report, that was my guy. It's like, I know exactly the subject matter. And that's how I learned. And that's how you keep legends and legacies going. It's through stories and the lore of this angel that is Clemente.
Man, you said it right. He is an angel because he was one of the most selfless ball players. When he found out that everything he was sending over to Nicaragua was getting sidetracked and stolen by the government,
Yes.
he made it a point to go on that 4th trip. And even though it was overweight and understaffed, he didn't care. He just felt like he wanted to help. And he
Yes.
didn't care that it was New Year's Eve. He didn't care about none of that.
He
He
did.
just wanted to see that package get through and help out and do the service what he meant it for, which was to help the people. And that wasn't even Puerto Rico. That was Nicaragua.
Nicaragua.
So it goes to show he didn't care. He just wanted to help the unfortunate, the less fortunate, and he wanted to share with what he had. If he had some, everyone else had.
Yeah. And you know what? As you know, Jackie went through hell. Everyone knows that. And Clemente was, I want to say 8 years after Jackie made his debut. I'm very, very bad at math, but I want to say it was 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
But he carried the torch in a way. He didn't go, and you know, he faced racism, prejudices, unimaginable. He carried the torch from Jackie, and he had the barrier of, you know, the language barrier. And I remember as I got older and, you know, I can't get enough of Clemente. I'm reading, I'm looking at periodicals, I'm looking at videos. But after he won the World Series and he had the interview, he's like, let me say something in Spanish. That, you know, speaking to like my folks, that was a big deal for a Hispanic player to speak on international television in Spanish. That was a moment. And to me, he has forever lasting impact on the game because he changed the whole format for the Hall of Fame. He was the first, of course, Latin American player to be into the Hall, but he also forewent the 5 years, and they changed it to, I want to say, if a player has been passed for 6 months. So he has, unfortunately, a legacy in that. The Clemente Award, of course, every year, which is given just to one person. And, the number being worn on the first day of Hispanic Heritage. Those are lasting memories and lasting effects through the game.
Right. Well, Lou, I want to thank you so much for joining us. One of your heroes, Roberto Clemente. So I figured you wouldn't mind hopping on.
I got you, homie. I got you, bro.
Let's see who else Mike has for me over here. Thank you, Lou.
Just me.
Oh, Mike, the man, the myth, the legend. Yo and hello.
Yo and hello.
Thank you, Mike, for being the pinch hitter and saving this happening. I wish Julio was here. I wanted him to share some of his stories. He has so many stories. He's so inspirational. And I felt like we did the best that we could. And I'll have him on at a later date. But thank you, Mike. What does Roberto Clemente mean to you as a baseball fan and a collector?
It's funny how you think of certain players, and I've been watching from the background of this StreamYard and loving everything that everybody's contributing to the conversation about Roberto Clemente. And as a white guy, it's weird. I always gravitated as a fan towards Hispanic players, whether it was Ruben Sierra for the Rangers, who, by the way, wore number 21 because he's from Puerto Rico, and Sammy Sosa wore 21. I mean, you think about these great players that wore a number in honor of a player like Roberto Clemente, Juan Gonzalez, Ivan Rodriguez, all of that. None of those players get to be who they are without Roberto Clemente laying the groundwork and being the player that he was. I mean, he was the first Latin star, and now Major League Baseball is chocked full of them. And they all have some debt of gratitude, debt of honor to Roberto Clemente for for baseball being what it is today, where it's this giant melting pot of races and creeds and all that. I think it's wonderful for the game. Obviously, you want the best players to play, no matter the color of their skin, no matter where they come from. It doesn't matter. Can you hit a ball? Can you throw a ball? Can you pitch a ball? That's what matters. And baseball is the great equalizer, right? In terms of talent, and talent will rule the day.
And the thing that makes the legend and him per se as a hero is because, with all that being said, hitting, throwing, playing well on the field, it's what he did off the field that was just as great.
No doubt.
There's not many people that you could say played great and off the field did great things, just on the same level, if not better. And that's the thing about Roberto Clemente that I think is such a big deal, was that he did so much off the field that it was just as many stories to be said for. And I think he's an amazing person, someone that anyone could look up to and hope to carry themselves, if not 10% of what he was like, because he endured so much. Like, I mean, none of us endure racism like they did back then. And he held himself up as a gentleman, never fought with people or whatever injustices he dealt with, and just kept carrying on and playing ball and being a gentleman. And that's something.
Yeah, there are lots of great books out there about the life of Roberto Clemente. I would encourage everyone to get one. Like, go find one, read about the guy's life, read a biography of Roberto Clemente. You will not be disappointed. And your respect for him as a person. We can all read the stats. We can all go to Baseball Reference and look up his numbers and marvel at that. Go read about the man, Roberto Clemente.
And how do you feel about his number being retired?
I hate to sound like a broken record and echoing everything else that everyone's been saying, but I think it's probably overkill, honestly. And look, I think he's a legend. Like it's just where do you stop with that? Like people have said before, I think that's a great point. I love the Roberto Clemente Day. I love that. I think it's great to honor, and there's probably a dozen other players that should be honored, but these guys that were groundbreaking, and there's probably only a handful of those in the sport. Clemente being the first real big Latin star, that says something. I mean, he literally had an entire, not just Puerto Rico, but all of Latin America were Roberto Clemente crazy, in terms of being fans and following his career and idolizing the man, the player, all of that good stuff. So he was such a role model to that group, to Hispanics just in general. Pretty powerful. So I'm like John. I wouldn't be mad if they did. That wouldn't bother me one bit if they retired his number. I would go, great, awesome. But I can see both sides of it.
Now, I don't have anything where I could see comments. What are the comments like? What are people writing?
They're all pretty lame. No, I'm just kidding. They're great. You can actually see comments if you go up on your screen and hit the comments on the top right. I think you can public comments.
I'm on the phone, like so the phone
okay.
is a little different.
Well, they're going kind of nuts here. It's been really great. Everybody's I need to get we're old, James, right? So we gotta I wish I had time. I should have done this. Like I have the whole Clemente run, and I know like George and Don and John, we all have, and Lou, we all have cards, like so many cards of Clemente because he was awesome and his cards are awesome. And here's one. Caesar says there should be free ice cream on Roberto Clemente Day if they don't retire his number, of course. And you hear about it. Clemente is one of those guys that regardless of whether you're white, black, Hispanic, whatever, you heard stories about Clemente growing up. And I sure did. And I read things about him and just that's the funny thing when you're a kid, right? It doesn't matter it didn't matter to me that he was Hispanic or whatever. That was irrelevant. Like it's just, that's the innocence of being a child, right? You just go, man, he's awesome.
Yeah. I think if you're a true collector of baseball cards and history, you don't look at race. You just look at what he was on the field, his legend, what he did when it counted in the World Series, All-Star games, and that itself just has you wanting to collect certain players. And it doesn't matter dead ball, vintage, modern. It as collectors, we're unbiased. We just want greatness, and that's all that matters to us.
For sure, man. This was a great idea, by the way. So
well, thank you. I wish it would have went smoothly, but I do need to thank you so much for being the backup plan. StreamYard, I don't know what else to say. They let me down today.
Well, we made lemonade out of lemons with this, and I'm so sorry that Mr. Pabon couldn't be on with us because I really wanted to hear his take on this, and you need to have him on your channel and just do a one-on-one discussion as a follow-up to this live stream. I think
that's
a lot
what
of us
I'll
would be
have.
interested. So yeah.
I'm gonna forward and share this stream with him so you could see how we spoke about him. And we'll be on whether it's tomorrow or another day. He's presently in California. His website, Latino Sports, they give out a yearly award. He was in California giving Fernando Tatis Jr. an award. So it's not small change how the Latin players think of that award. They consider it very prestigious when they're honored with one of his awards. So that's what he was doing. That's why you saw him with the mask and he was traveling. And I feel honored to call him a friend, and most of you guys that were in the panel, my friends also. But I will have him on. And he has so many stories, so many stories. I feel inspired every time I'm on the phone with him because he just gets me motivated. I'm like, yeah, we got to do a live stream. We got to get this out there. He's like, yeah, come on, let's do it.
That's
So
awesome.
he's a
Great
great
idea,
guy.
man. Great
Well,
idea.
thank you, Mike. I really need to thank you once again. Thank you, Bench Clear Media and the whole nine. Thank you
You
guys for joining us, man. It was a blast for everyone that came on and everyone that viewed it. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks everybody for joining James. Really, I'm again I was just going to be a panelist, and it turned out that it had to work this way. Glad it could, and I hope you guys enjoy this. If you don't follow any of the guys that you saw on this, you won't be disappointed if you go watch their channels. I'm telling you, James put together a home run type of crew here to talk about Roberto Clemente and honoring him. So, James, we do have Julio on now. If you want me to leave and you want to talk to Julio, you can.
Yes, sure, definitely. Let's
All right, I'm gonna step away then, and I'll bring Julio on, and you can talk to the man himself. And here we go. Hold on.
That's good. Hello.
Julio. How are you, Julio?
You and I have had already conversations, so this is nothing new for us. I don't know exactly what is it you want me to do now.
Well, the viewers don't know who you are, so I need to introduce you to the
okay.
viewers, and I want them to get to know you and what Roberto Clemente means to you. And I know you went a little bit into that with my channel, but we're on Bench Clear Media right now, and these might be a different set of viewers. Why is it that Roberto Clemente means so much to you and his legacy?
Well, the fact is, like I was saying earlier, I did not grow up as a child admiring Clemente. I grew up across the street from Yankee Stadium, and as a result, basically, I was, indoctrinated to love the Yankees, which was the stadium that I could walk to any day. And basically, my heroes were, like Mickey Mantle, Tom Tresh, these particular players, Stottlemyre. So to me, the fact that I never got to appreciate and to see Clemente, and I could have, if I would have been, taught, if I would have been, opened my mind a bit to, Latino players that we have today. At that time, that wasn't the reality for Latinos. We were being absorbed into the dominant culture. There was no ESPN. There was no, unless you read a Spanish paper, which a lot of us who grew up in New York didn't, was English dominant. So it wasn't until I became an adult that I got to recognize more about Clemente, and the fact that I never got to see him play when I could have. I was just a train ride away, man, to see some of his last games at Shea Stadium. You know how much that hurt me that I never got to see the great one play. That's incredible. So, I can't let myself down with that, but I could lift myself up with understanding the real history of Clemente and what he represents for us all Latinos, not just Puerto Ricans, but all Latinos, and to most baseball fans in general. But I want to make it clear, particularly to Latinos and particularly to the Puerto Rican community, which is still communities that are, not to the level in which they should be. The census was just released for 2020. Hopefully, again, corporate America and many others will recognize what they saw, and they got shocked in 2010 when the statistics came out for the census, and it showed that the Latino growth in the United States was way beyond what their projections were, way beyond. So that scared everybody. Shit, there's too many of them. How do we capture them? How do we get that vote? How do we get them to buy our cars? How do we get them to buy, our, so America was the corporate.
All right, breaking up a little bit there, Julio. You still there? Seems like Julio has a bad connection here.
He probably just needs to go when he comes back on, go back to the part of the house where he was, where the connection was probably a little bit better if he can come back on.
Right.
I want to hear him talk, James, maybe ask him about, because this is fascinating to me, by the way. I love hearing this. What,
You could stay on, Mike. We could co-host.
Well, This is your show, man. I'm just happy to be a part of it.
No, we're all part of it right now, man. I'm just happy to have us all together.
Yeah, like what is he doing? What's he trying to do? What's he, all of that kind of stuff.
That's what I was gonna get into, just to let people know what he does and what.
Okay, well, he's back. I'm gonna step out, let y'all talk some more, and I'm just gonna listen and be a fan right now and just listen to you guys.
Okay.
So I left off with the fact that basically that was my relationship in terms of Clemente. Now, my first experience with that, or with him directly or indirectly, was not in person where I could have, but was basically because of my father. My father was an avid baseball fan. Most Puerto Ricans and Caribbeans who came to the Northeast New York's area were basically coming from the baseball mentality. We're not Central American, we're not Latin American, where there was more of the soccer mentality. The Caribbean was basically, baseball. It started before us with the Cubans, and then, the Puerto Ricans, and then, of course, to where it's gotten to today. So bottom line is that, when I started checking out about Clemente, I realized, wow, there was so much, but the impact that he did have on me was more life detailed, in the sense that it actually affected me in ways that I probably wouldn't have done if I would have seen him play, which was that I remember once going through my home, I was just playing around with some guys, and I ran from, the fire escape window, which is, I don't know if you understand New York. New York has buildings and it has fire escapes in case it's a fire. From tenements, you just open your window, go to the fire escape, and just go all the way down. We used to call those our balconies. So some of us actually used to hang out there all the time. We used to bring our radios there. We speak to a girl, next door or upstairs because her father wanted to into her apartment, but he definitely would let her on the fire escape, so you could talk to her. So that's the fire escape was our hangout. And bottom line is, I was, coming down from the fire escape, and I would have went through my living room, and my father was there with two other men, and they were watching a game, and he says, "Mira, ese Clemente," like scolding me. "Hey, this is Clemente." And the reason he said it to me that way was because every time he told me something about Clemente, I was like, forget Clemente, Mickey Mantle, look what's happening
Really?
here, from my fifth grade on, that's what I was, because I didn't know Clemente. You can't blame someone for being ignorant, for not having, information. And that's the majority of our children, which is what led me to where I'm at today, Latino Sports, where we give the most prestigious award to baseball players around the country. And we also are the oldest award giving. Give me 1 second. This is like a commercial break. Chicken sandwich. Yeah, that was asking me for my dinner. Remember, I told you guys I'm far, far away from home, and my wife is gonna love my daughter-in-law, but she's taking care of me. So she's making sure that I eat.
Now, Julio, can you just briefly say what's the reason you're not at home right now?
Oh, well. First, let me just finish this last part. The fact is that when my father told me to stop and look, I looked at the TV, and it was, to me, what looked like an African-American man. And when I looked closely, it was Roberto Clemente, because I heard Spanish. He was being interviewed for being the MVP of the World Series. I believe that was the 70 World Series. And bottom line, he was the man. So before they interviewed him, I'd never seen a Puerto Rican on TV, and when I heard him, he said, "Okay, I'm going to speak a couple of words in Spanish." And what he said was poetic. I mean, he said, on this, the most glorious day of my life, of my career, before I received this, I want to ask for my blessings in Spanish in Puerto Rico. We always ask for blessings. All my grandchildren, they see me, they say bendición. When I see my elders, I say bendición, which means you're asking for blessings. And then we answer, Dios te bendiga, God bless you. That's a tradition in our thing. So he's asking for the bendición from his friends in Puerto Rico. And then he's dedicating this, his achievement to, people of Puerto Rico, especially to the mothers. That was incredible. I mean, my jaw almost dropped, because I had never, ever heard Spanish on English dominant TV or radio. There was no ESPN, there was no Mega, there was no, ESPN Español, there was no internet, there was none of that, man. Everything was black and white. And bottom line is, Clemente never came up. And for me to hear Spanish for that quick couple of seconds, and I just kept on running and playing with my guys, it affected me, because later on in life, like everything, you plant a seed. Sometimes the seed takes a long time to blossom. Sometimes they blossom quickly. Some of the strongest trees take the longest. There's a tree in China. It takes 10 years for it to blossom because the roots are growing down. But when it starts growing up, it's one of the strongest, most powerful trees on the planet. And that's
Yeah.
us. That's my
That's
experience with
beautiful.
Clemente, and that's how I got it. Now the reason I'm in San Diego is because of the fact that Latino Sports started something back in 1990 for something that happened in '89, which was that the American League Baseball the Baseball Writers Association of America has selected Robin Yount to be the MVP when many in the Latino community and the non-Latino community, there was one national sports publication, which was, definitely Anglo. And their editorial had stated that they believed that Clemente was going to be the National League MVP. So people were expecting that. I wasn't, because I wasn't, again, a Ruben Sierra fan either, because there was no way of knowing too much what was happening in Texas where he was playing, as opposed to just reading the two local papers, which is the New York Daily News, the New York, Post, basic papers in New York Times, but they cover sports locally. They don't talk about what's happening elsewhere. What I heard about Ruben Sierra was that he was bypassed. By a lot of the press felt that he was bypassed because of the fact that he was in a low market team, but then so was Milwaukee. That's where Robin Yount played. But Roberto had two other obstacles. One, he was a black Puerto Rican, and two, he didn't speak English. And those two
Ruben
factors,
Sierra.
Ruben Sierra, yeah, he didn't speak
Right.
Spanish. I mean, he didn't speak English. So the bottom line, a lot of people felt he didn't get the publicity he deserved to be able to be the MVP. When I heard about the details of why he should have been MVP, I said, yeah, he could have gone that way easily too, because he his third year in the majors, he was rocking it. He decided to be in a school in the South Bronx, growing up.
Okay, we're having a little bit technical difficulties once again. Apologize about that. Mike, do you want to?
So he's talking about Ruben Sierra, right? And
Yeah.
he was my first kind of adult player that I followed tremendously. I had a huge collection of Ruben Sierras. I still do. I still have all my Ruben Sierra stuff. And back then you had to buy cards, at a shop or a show or whatever. And I would get 100 counts of his 88 Fleer and his 86 Fleer update rookie and his 87 tops and all of that stuff. Ruben Sierra was, and I think he got robbed of the 89 MVP, which is what Julio was talking about.
I think he was getting into, that's how he started his award.
Yeah.
Was
well, here he comes. He's coming right back. I'll leave again and bring him right.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you, even if it's temporary. I want you to know that it's not a conspiracy, but the fact is that most of the time when I start talking stuff, I get censored. I've been known. I'm a paid speaker. I have an agent, and basically they find locations for me to go speak. And I've spoken in places. I spoke once in the University of upstate New York. It was Syracuse. It was another top university, and I spoke to the Latino students. And when I finished speaking to them, they start asking questions about, well, how did you do this or do that? And then when I left, I learned, they sent me a text, thanks to your speech, your motivated students, we took over this building and we're holding it until we get our demands, So it's like, I said, I didn't encourage anybody to take over any building. So, when I'm on any type of social media and I begin to speak words of, I call them wisdom, or, basically just passing on information. None of the stuff that I say, as crazy as it sounds, it was made up. I mean, this is real stuff.
Right.
It's all documented. So bottom line is, I wind up in an event for Ruben Sierra.
Right. So you were doing that
of
because of Ruben Sierra, and then you started up an award? And
yeah,
who was the first person you gave an award to?
Ruben Sierra.
Oh, so you gave it to Ruben Sierra that year.
We invited him to come to. I decided, because it was just me. I thought, after speaking to these reporters in Puerto Rico who were very upset, I decided to say, hey, I can understand that. And because the Yankee Stadium is so close to my house, it's walking distance. And I know in the old stadium, you might not understand this, but in the old stadium, they had the entrance for all the players was in the back of the stadium, which faced a public park where kids like me and others from the South Bronx who like to play, poor people's tennis. You know what poor people's tennis is?
Mm-hmm.
It's paddleball. So,
Mm-hmm.
and handball. So we
Handball
used to be
with
playing there all the time.
the glove.
Yeah. Oh no, before that, we were too poor. It was with the pink glove, the Spaldings,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the handball. We played the same ball we used for stickball.
Right.
So bottom line is, being there all the time, I used to see the Yankees all the time because they had to go into the parking lot. From the parking lot, they park their cars, they go into the stadium, and the visiting teams, the bus will drop them off right there. However, fans, they were separated from them by the police barricades, those wooden horses, they call them. So bottom line is that I was out there, and I decided to do an award, giving him something there. That whenever he comes off that bus, I was going to get some kids from the community and was going to make a plaque and give it to him. And bottom
Right.
line is that turned into a major award in Yankee Stadium against the Yankees' wishes. First player in the history of Yankee Stadium to get an award that's not a Yankee by the Latino community. And from there, I realized that a lot of people had come because it was in the newspapers. And I saw a lot of people who felt like me. And there was a banner that said, Ruben Sierra, you're the real MVP. Other banners said, it's about time. So I decided that from that moment on, I just did that as a reaction to what I felt was wrong. But I said, hell no, I'm going to continue to do this because our children need to see Latino positive role models. I was a
And
school
who-
teacher. I saw all other cultures receiving positive role models, but the positive role models our kids were seeing were the ones that are not conducive to their growth. You're seeing drug dealers, driving BMWs. I got a master's degree, and my wife and I used to look at each other. We said, yo, we got master's degrees, and we got guys with high school dropouts driving BMWs and driving Mercedes. What are we doing that's wrong in our hood?
Right. Name. Let me know some of the guys that have won your award.
Oh, my God. From 1989, Ruben Sierra being the first one. We went on to, I don't know, damn, this is the order, but it was like, with Bobby Bonilla, Julio Franco, Carlos Baerga, Juan Igor Gonzalez, Martinez, Edgar Martinez. Moving further up, Alomar, oh my God, who got the most awards? 7 awards. 7. Give me a Latino baseball player you think that merited getting 7 awards. Hold on a second.
Hey,
Let me
Rob.
let this poor dog in.
Alex Rodriguez.
Nope.
Alex Rodriguez.
Nope. Doesn't come close.
No. Pedro.
Nope. Pedro won
Who
it
won
once.
7?
Alex Rodriguez won it twice. Somebody
Who
won it
won
7
7?
times. Albert Pujols.
Albert Pujols. There you go. In
Check
the
out his
2000s,
numbers
he
and
was
check
an
out
animal.
So he was, and before him, you know who it was, but he got injured or he got out, which was Igor Gonzalez. Juan Igor Gonzalez. He won it 3 times.
Okay, and who won it
He
this
would
year?
he would have won it. He would have won it 3 times, but it wasn't really 3 because that was the year they went on strike. And the moment, and so we consider that up to the point that they went on strike. We look at those numbers, and there was no question that Igor was on his way to getting another one.
And who won it this year?
He was killing it. This year, we now have grown, so we have the MVP of each league, American and National, but then we also added Latino MVP pitcher, Latino MVP, reliever, or setup or closer, and then we also added Latino rookie.
So
As
you
you can
honored
see,
about
the
7
Latino
people
from
this year?
1989, when you can count. Yes, we honored 3 on pitcher, reliever, and rookie. That's 6, 6, 7, 8. 8.
Oh, wow.
And the 2 here, the
That's
reason I'm in
admirable.
California is because on Friday we're going to San Diego. We're going to be honoring. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it can't be the way we normally would have it, which is like we usually have a luncheon and we invite the player, or we do something with the local community, because this is not just about awarding baseball players. That's why if any of you join my clubhouse on on the internet, the clubhouse that we have is called Latino Sports. It's not just, it's about the politics of sports. It's not just sports, because sometimes we get engulfed in, being entertained, and we don't understand that behind this entertainment is a multi-billion-dollar business. And that business, in terms of how it brings its resources down to the community, is very important to look at. Who's making the majority of the money? When tacos started to sell more than hot dogs in America, people didn't pay attention to that, but I did, and corporate America did too. That's why they were selling more tacos and hot dogs in baseball in America. Whoa! Then when the statistics came out and realized, oh, this is why this is going on. It's the fastest growing and continues to be. I believe that there's a lot of things that need to still be done. I was so happy that if you guys get a chance, please, I beg of you, if you're really into want to learn about sports and the history of sports and the politics of sports, read my article, the one I just posted that's on Latino Sports today about the Latino MVP Awards Hispanic Heritage Month.
Now,
It explains why we're here, but it also explains how Major League Baseball got to where it got to, and finally, like, for example, putting accents in 2016 on players' back names, right? We told them that almost 15 years ago. We said to them, listen, if you don't put accents on players' names, that's basically misspelling their name, and also, to a great degree, disrespecting a culture, and to some, it's going to be perceived as you really don't pay attention to our community. You don't understand our community.
Right.
So I brought that up years ago, and then they finally did it. Now you see a Colon is no longer part of the body. Colon is not colon. It's Colon. You see Jose. It's not Josie. It's Jose. And those things are very important, and we explained it in the article. So if you haven't read the article, read it, because it also explains about Tatis getting the award in the National League, which is on Friday, and us going then to Chicago for Jose Abreu, Cuban, for the Chicago White Sox.
Wow. I think that's a beautiful thing.
This is the 31st year, by the way. 31st year, James.
Yeah. I'm waiting for my YouTube award, MVP YouTube Hispanic Award.
Well, let me tell you something. At some point, as the community continues to grow, like I was with my daughter-in-law today. She just came back from getting a brand new car, and that's why we had a lot of problems, because trying to get on was moving on the internet. This country is still so backward when it comes to digital platforms and being able to have the technology that most European countries already have. Even some South American countries have it too, but here, depending on where you're at, you might lose a signal. But the fact is that right now, this is the perfect time to continue to do what you do, James, because there's a lot of information that's not known about our community. And like I said, it goes beyond just collecting. Okay, I collect everything. I have a Michael Jordan a plate. I have a Rice signed jersey, NFL. I have the greatest quarterback when Miami Dolphins went undefeated in the NFL, and then they won the Super Bowl undefeated, Dan Marino. I got a signed football from him. I collect stuff, but when it comes to the Latino baseball players and Latino, the athletes, I collect those even, to a greater degree. And basically, unfortunately, the store, we had to close it because we were introducing a lot of people, especially children, who just, believe it or not, still a lot of children during the time we had the store, they just don't see enough positive role models or just positive, things, period. I mean, there was a research done in terms of the number of things that children see. As much as you could talk to them in the home, and as much of that perhaps they might be able to get from school in between the periods of walking to school, getting to school, watching television, hearing radio, casually just walking through the street and seeing a bus ad, they get something like over 300 and something, negative cues of something, whether it's to purchase something, which is, get, as opposed to give, as opposed to, share, as opposed to, like learn about, something in your community. And when it comes to the Latino community, you see it super less. And whether you're listening to a radio program, how many editorial writers for sports magazines in the United States are Latino?
Not that many.
Find out and find out one day and come back, and I can guarantee you not that many. And again, it's not about there should be numbers. I'm just saying, look, if you really want to know how when Albert Pujols hits a home run, right, and is described by a person who grew up in a suburban area, who has had a very good solid economic upbringing and educational upbringing, he'll say details of that home run. But when a Latino like Albert, who has gone through a lot to just feel, a little bit of recognition, or just to feel a little bit proud, when Albert hits a home run and you see his face, and he looks up, a lot of players look up, now they become very religious now, they're all looking up to the sky. Some of them are doing it because of their moms or because of their dads, that's also very, very, special. And those are the things that a lot of people don't see behind the actual plays and the fact that they hit home runs. Yeah, but they also have an incredible, personal life. And sometimes, a lot of that is missing. And that's why we were so accepted by so many baseball players, because we admit we're not objective. We don't claim to be objective. When it comes to the Latino community, we promote Latinos. That's it. You go to LatinoSports.com, it's only about Latinos. We do write special issues or times, depending on the circumstances. Like, at the boxing match, hey, if Tito Gomez, or, if the Cotto lost to an African-American or to a fighter from Ireland or from Japan, we write about it, we cover it. But our focus, even in that fight that he lost, would be to try to interview, at the Cotto, or to get to understand Cotto a little bit better, so that a lot of the children and the young people in our community can understand that there is a guy like Cotto that you don't see only on TV. But the fact that he donated almost $1 million to a baseball academy in Puerto Rico, a boxer, these types of things, a lot of people just don't know is what Latino sports is all about. So we have a very good level of respect from our community and the baseball players, where it's taken us a while, and it's developing, to get that same respect that we finally got from Major League Baseball and others, because
Right.
they are a
Now-
co-sponsor of this award.
Now, before we end this, I feel Mike should get back on if Mike wants to ask you anything, because we're in his channel's platform.
I'm just
Yes.
thrilled to be listening to Julio. It's my first introduction to your website, and I'm definitely going to check it out. I really appreciate what you're doing to bring recognition to these players that are well deserved. And I love that you love your culture, and you should. I wish there were more. I'm Irish. I wish there were more Irish baseball players. There's just not, or at least, not the same. But
That's your background, Irish?
yes, sir.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a little statistic that I want you to throw out your next dinner party.
All right.
Or next time you talk to somebody. The first Free Island Committee club started in Harvard University, and this president was a Puerto Rican by the name of Dr. Pedro Abisu Campo, who got 3 doctorate degrees from Harvard, and who went on to become one of the greatest Puerto Ricans. And then, unfortunately, he was tortured by the United States in prison. And it was the Republic of Ireland that he was always defending, because he believed that Puerto Ricans could learn a lot about the Irish and the IRA in terms of the struggle to free Ireland. So he used that as a model for Puerto Rico. And as such, he was labeled a terrorist, and he was tortured and killed. But he was one of the greatest leaders. He was a Puerto Rican who started that club.
Wow.
Good story. Love it. Thank you, Julio, for being here and sharing your insight and your obvious passion for just And again, Latino sports, and especially love hearing the baseball stories. I was at the World Series game in 2011 when Albert Pujols hit 3 home runs, and I swear one of them is still in orbit. It has not landed yet. And that I remember walking away going, "That's unbelievable." I mean, Barry Bonds is the best player I've ever seen play, I have to admit, but I would put Albert Pujols a close second.
But you know what? Another achievement that day is that, or they're similar to that, I believe. I was in the car with him, and he drove out of the stadium. And when he got to the corner, there was a red light, and all these fans that were just around the stadium, they saw him and they came rushing to the car. And you know that he actually rolled down the window and began to sign autographs for the people right there in the street. You know, I said, not too many players do that, you know. So I thought that these are the types of stuff that I just, you know, I enjoy so much about baseball behind the scenes, that, you know, guys like him, you really appreciate. Like I wrote recently, how many of these players, it took an Anglo player, Cone, the only one that I heard say that he is grateful to Kirk Flood for the contract he got for the Yankees. I didn't hear any Latino player getting 340 million or any African American player getting big money saying that they owe what they're getting today to a player that our people don't know, Kirk Flood, who, you know, was a great player, was a good player, and basically he wound up coaching a high school team in Oakland because he was totally blacklisted. He was the Kaepernick before Kaepernick.
Yep.
But his protest was more than the Kaepernick's, because Kaepernick's was for a social issue, but his was for an economic issue, which is the bottom line. You know, we're living in a capitalist country, so what we should be thinking about, which is what a lot of us think about as collectors, right? You know, you see what's the value that you collected has. That's what this is about. And when you have a player that actually challenged that, you ain't never forget about Pete Rose. You know, Pete Rose would get in before Kirk Flood, and I'm trying to get Kirk Flood in because it's not just about Latinos, but hey, I believe that man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
One last question for you. One of my favorite I'm a Rangers fan, so Sierra, Juan Gonzalez, Ivan Rodriguez, all players that I idolized growing up. And my most recent one has been Adrian Beltre. Did he ever win the MVP award?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Good. That's good to hear, because he is an amazing ball player and first ballot Hall of Famer all the way.
No, not only that, but he's also a very stand-up person. You know, almost all these guys that we've had, when we approach them and we let them know that they have won, you know, the award, a lot of them just say, I didn't even know about the award, you know. And when they hear about it, when we explain it to them, just like we explained on this program with you guys about how it started with Ruben Sierra, they all like are in awe. And the fact that, you know, Mariano Rivera told us, he's the other guy who won it the most. I think he won it like 6 times as best closer, right? And I don't think there's no argument on that.
From Panama.
The top Latino closer for all the years that he won it. And he once told us when we were interviewing him and we're thanking him for, you know, like giving us the interview and stuff. And he said, no, it is players like me who need to thank you, because you are bringing out our stories. You are talking to us, not just because we're doing great in baseball or whatever, but Latino sports has always been, you know, like out there. So I thank you. And a lot of players, when they say something like that, you know, Albert Pujols, A Day in the Life of Albert Pujols, ESPN, and they're taking him around the house, and he takes him to his trophy room, and he shows them all the stuff, Silver Slugger Award, MVP, everything, blah, blah, blah. These guys been getting trophies since they were in the crib. So, but our awards are not like that. Our awards are the recent awards for the last 12 years, I think, 10 years. My memory serves me correct. We've been giving one unique, original watercolor painting done by one of the greatest sports illustrators, painters in the country. His name is James Fiorentino. If you ever, write that down and Google him and see his work, and you're going to freak out. This kid has an incredible talent, and he volunteered to do these with us for, an arrangement that we have in terms with the players. And when these players get that painting, you should see their faces. It's like, whoa. And then it becomes a battle between the wife and the mother, or the girlfriend and a sister, because they all want it to be. And this is not going to your house. And Albert Pujols was taking them around his room, and he's showing them. I think at that time he had 6 or 7, and he says, of all these awards in this room, which covered his room wall to wall, he said, this is the one that means the most to me. He said, because this is given by this guy named Julio Pavon. I don't know why he mentioned me before, but he said, Julio Pavon and Latino Sports, and this is about my community. And when my community gives me something, I really appreciate it. But I get a call from the ESPN reporter. He says, yo, bro, you just got a major shout out from Albert Pujols on ESPN Espanol. This guy, he just blew you up. I said, you serious? He said, yeah. And he told me what he said, and he said, he was very proud. And that, to me, like I wrote in my article today, that to me basically is something that gives me the pleasure to see that some of these players, people think because they got a large contract or because they're very popular, that, that's it. But when they get something like from their community, it's like, wow. It's like I could get compliments all I want in the street. But if my father, if my mother, if someone that relates me directly, which unfortunately I never got that much of, because I come from a broken home. Bottom line is that, it just does so much more to you, because you're getting it from people that you love. They love you because that's part of your culture. I remember,
Awesome.
who was the other one? Johan Santana. He won the Cy Young. He just finished winning the Cy Young. And he came the following year, because we always give it the season after. And he came to a restaurant in the hood across the street from some projects. And we got some kids from the projects who never got an opportunity to see each other.
Oh, that sucks. Right when he was getting into it.
Oh
I
man.
think I heard this story before, but it's always great hearing it coming out of his mouth, so I don't feel like I'll do it justice.
Well, that's okay. We've been on an hour and a half almost. We'll let everybody go, and I appreciate everybody doing this and coming on, and that's awesome.
Thank you, Mike, for being the pinch hitter and giving us your platform to your station, your channel, to let us speak and come together and talk about this subject, and Roberto Clemente, and hear Julio and his channel and his award. And thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, James. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Bye,
Keep
guys.
electing.